So vote by mail has introduced a real problem with respect to enforced privacy. It has introduced room for people to extort votes, for people to sell votes, and that's real. And that's a huge hole. This introduces the exact same hole, just a teensy bit. So since we've already gone to vote by mail in California, there's simply no reason to worry about this unless we're planning on going back from vote by mail. That's never going to happen. Once it's out of the bag, it's out of the bag. So I think vote by mail is the answer to this first concern. Then there's a lot of election law, a lot of voting law that is simply ambiguous. And it would be really helpful if it were cleared up whether or not you're allowed to print numbers on ballots. But, you know, sometimes people who don't want to do something will find any excuse not to do it. And so they'll use an argument like, well, I'm not sure if we're allowed to print it. Well, okay, don't print on the ballots then. Okay? Instead of printing numbers on each ballot, then every 25th ballot, put in a blank sheet and just print the number on that and keep the ballots in the same sequence so you can still get back to the paper. I mean, the thing is, the slightest amount of thought will show that some of these problems are not real, and yet you're going to hear them. You're going to hear them cited as, oh, we can't do it. And when you hear those problems cited, it very often means, please don't bother me. I know what I'm doing. You know, cost. We're in very tough times right now, but the software is free. You can use regular commercial scanners, and you can do this on laptops. You can even do this on a netbook. It'd be a little bit slow, but it would probably still be as fast as the scan. So the cost, it's true, it's not zero, but it's negligible if you truly have an interest in doing this. You can make it happen. And then here's one that always comes up. What if the second count is wrong and the first count was right? Why cause ourselves all that trouble? Well, that's true. It's true. It's very possible. In fact, that was our assumption the first time we came up with those ballots. We figured we'd blown it, not the original commercial system had blown it. If the second count is wrong repeatedly, you're probably going to stop doing this, or at least you're not going to do it with that system. So that's a problem that will go right away. But it's the wrong question. The question that you should be asking is not what if the second count is wrong. The question you should be asking is, what if the first count is wrong? Right now, there's no way to find that out. Because while the second count gives you these images with numbers on them and shows you how those images connect to spreadsheets that you can look at and shows you how those spreadsheets calculate up to a vote count, the original system says there were 272,919 votes for Don Jones. Believe it. Believe it.
Okay, so that was kind of one of the early ballot imaging, or the first ballot imaging, the TEVS, Trachtenberg Election Verification System, other than what I had mentioned with the Prime 3, the Deckert design, which I think actually maybe did predate, but that has this barcode on the verified ballots. So at this point, though, in our meeting, I'm going to introduce our next guest, because our two guests that are with us, and we want to thank again Ray Lutz and John Roberts Brakey, also working in this same field, for joining us.
Hey, New York. Every winter, the entertainment industry descends on Park City.
Okay, and so if we could...
For the Sundance Film Festival. This is an important pageant for filmmakers who have ambitions to turn their artwork into a commodity.
Okay, I'm trying to stop screen sharing, and I believe I have.
This year, Vimeo asked me to make a short documentary about it.
Oh, these technology things that love to come on by themselves. Let me get back to introducing Ray Lutz. So pardon some of our noise in this particular meeting. Hopefully that will stay off. Ray is the president of, how do you pronounce this? Cognises?
Cognisis, yeah, so let me just introduce myself.
Okay.
I wanted to say that I started in about around 2006 getting involved in more activism, and specifically because I'm an engineer with background in document image processing, I decided I would look into the, the voting situation because it was a concern at the time. I didn't realize it would be as bad as it is, and so hard to figure it out because of just the resistance of the elections officials that we have here in San Diego, being Michael Vu, who was the guy who apparently fixed the election in 2004 for George W. Bush against John Kerry, documented in Richard Hayes Phillips' book called Witness to a Crime. So I would like to basically start with my basic viewpoint is from my desire is not to get the elected officials to use something that they claim, as Trachtenberg was saying, that we should trust them because they studied the open source, and we have some open source experts that have studied it and everything is fine. My viewpoint is I want to be able to check the data so that I can see that I can follow it all the way through and see that that it does make it. And what Trachtenberg was saying, it actually reflects well as to what I was proposing back in 2008. And what I'll do is share let's see if I can just share that one slide. I guess that's working. This one slide here is what I want to try to speak to, which is what we were calling in 2008 the open canvas method. And I've since renamed it to the open ballot initiative because it does attempt to open the ballots up for inspection. But more than that, and let me explain this as a process. First of all, we're looking at this first box where we see the paper ballot. And in this proposal, we are settling on using a durable paper ballot as the starting point, largely because, as an example, in San Diego County, which is one of the top, well, it's number 2 in the state of California, and I think it's number 6 nationally in terms of size, number of voters. About 60% of the voters vote by mail here, and they use a paper ballot. So most of the concentration that you hear from people who say, well, we want open source voting machines. Really, for most voters, they're not using a machine anymore. They're using just a paper ballot at home. And so the process needs to address how you deal with vote by mail voting. Now, I'm not saying that vote by mail is perfectly, safe, but I think it's a good place to start right now, even though there's other ways you could possibly do it in the future. But essentially, straight electronic voting has been shown to be a big problem. If you do have the paper ballot, it's something that you can go back to check. But in this first section you see here, if you do have this online, but I'll try to describe it for those who are just on the call, there's a chain of custody required for these paper ballots. And that is to hopefully make them immutable so that no one can either add ballots, subtract ballots, or change them. We want to try to make this chain of custody portion as small as possible and limit it as much as possible. So at the polling place, accepting the ballots and then bringing it back to a central office, that's the way they do it here in San Diego. And the proposal is much like what Trachtenberg was saying, was to use off the shelf, what they call commercial off the shelf, COTS. And that was a term made up by the military contractors, because either use military equipment or use commercial off the shelf. And it was a lot cheaper to use commercial off the shelf if you could buy it. Well, we've adopted that term here to mean something that is not specifically designed for the election application. And so you can buy these scanners that scan documents very easily, that scan them very, very well, have no internal knowledge about what the documents are. And this is an important point. You can make a scanner that's really good at making scanned image files that give you all of the definition, like a snapshot of each side of the image. And you don't have to know anything about the election application at all. In fact, you don't need to know what they're using these images for. And it's really kind of difficult to add that stuff into this scanner later if you wanted to say, well, we're going to hack the scanner and make it so that, number one, they can understand everything that's on the ballot and then somehow add images or screw them up. So it's very, very hard. And it's kind of like, I believe it's in essence, a fact of reality that we have to deal with. Kind of like eagles have really good vision, but they can't read. You know, to have an eagle be able to read, you'd probably have too big of a brain and then wouldn't be able to fly. You'd have a human being. But anyway, after they're scanned, and this is done in spurts, so there's usually different batches that they do this to. But here we're just going to look at the entire election, that they have ballot images all on some sort of media. Now, I think most people, and Brakey can probably talk to this some more, this is what Trachtenberg and others, and what a lot of the equipment is now doing, is making these ballot images. We need to be able to get to them as members of the public to make these public and something that we can get at. But my proposal that I was putting forth in 2008 was that the system goes a little bit beyond this. This is just the first step. What I wanted to also do is standardize these file formats such that anybody could come out here, and in this next section you see different colored layers. Those are different independent teams. And in the presentation that you just saw, Trachtenberg was talking about redundancy and redundant processing. This is the concept here, where you have independent teams, registrar voters can do it, different parties or oversight groups, or these could be actually just generic services somewhere on the web. It could be open source or not. The reason I don't always live and die by open source, because I don't think it really solves a lot to just say something is open source. Also, these commercial off-the-shelf scanners are not open source. So if you want to be able to allow a commercial off-the-shelf scanner, you have to be able to say, okay, that part of it can be proprietary. We're not going to require that the scanner has to open their source up, because you're just going to go out and buy that thing. And they're not going to open it up. In fact, you can argue pretty well that closed source might be better, because it does not allow any hackers to know how to get into the source to fool with it. With that said, I am not adverse to a lot of these steps to be open source, and again, things that you might just get off the internet somewhere, as long as it's done with this redundant type system and you have multiple people checking each other. So what happens here is the ballot images can be accessed either off the website, and I noticed that Dane County, Wisconsin, recently just posted all of their ballot images from the 2016 general election on their website. So if they can do it, anybody can do it. And these days, storage is not a problem. So this could just be, instead of disks, as I see here in the picture, it could be up on the website. Then these multiple teams, different independent teams, takes those images and processes them all themselves, 100%, doing an entire election themselves, and coming up with the cast vote records, which I'm showing here is just a table listing all ballots, and those could be in a standard cast vote record format. So there's three things that I think we need, and I'm working on the standards with the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, that's NIST, right now in their cast vote record and other standards groups. The three things that you need are the standard format for the files, and there's somewhat of an industry sort of default format coming out now, And we should be able to push the elections officials into one format, or maybe just a number of limited formats for the image files. But also I want to get these image files so that they're secured together in groups, such that you can't modify them, and that they can publish the security key to their website, so you can, in advance, you can then go back and check to see that nothing has changed. And that's akin to the blockchain methodology, even though this is not fully using blockchain, it just uses some of the same methods. And the same thing in the cast vote record. For each record in this, you have the hash value for the image or for what's in the cast vote record. But you need one more piece, and that was alluded to in Trachtenberg's, what he was showing there. You need to know the ballot styles and where the targets are, so you can pick up the marking on the ballots. That would be from a ballot styles file. That would be part of what would be produced here by the election official, so that everybody else could process it. When you're done processing, then it's a simple matter to have the software compare everything. You know, compare everybody's, like probably it would be a one-way thing where the election official comes out with their version of the cast vote record set, and then if you want to check it yourself, you go ahead and check it, and then you can say, well, gee, I found many ballots that did not match. You can run your software on it. But if you want to, since anybody can get to the ballot images, you can go ahead and count them by hand if you want. You know, you can go back and do that. Now, there's one critical step here. I just want to follow up and finish this. After the different independent teams produce their cast vote record set, then it goes through a comparison process and public review. I don't know if you watched, but the Al Franken election back when he was first running for the Senate, it was a really, really close race, and they had to go in and do the recount. If you watch that, they had it on the internet, and they looked at each ballot online as they walked through it. Why not allow that, really? And I myself, the reason I thought of this was because we had a special election here. Actually, it was in our fight against Blackwater expanding in our county. And they had a special election, and I video recorded all the ballots being counted, going, you know, one ballot to the next. You couldn't tell whose ballots they were. And I thought, hey, if I can video record all these ballots, why can't we have a better image of all of them so that I can take a look at them better? Because I couldn't really see them well enough in the video, and it was kind of hard to process, certainly hard for any software to process. That's how I came up with the idea. Turns out, at the time, Humboldt was working on the same problem, but again, all of these things only went so far. They did not embrace how do you get a standardized method for letting other groups compare. Now, I just want to say one more thing here before I say a little bit different topic, and that is there is a key and sensitive area here, which is the conversion of the ballots into the images. And we're relying upon somebody who's trusted to do this, but we also don't trust anyone. So we want to be able to actually check that. There are standards back from like 1996 that from the AIM, which is the Association for Image and Image Management, and basically document management people. And their standard is called TR34. And what it does is it say, here's how you deal with trying to take documents and put them through a scanner. What do you check to make sure the fidelity is good enough? You check the resolution of this here and there. And so they need to be checking as it goes through, so there's not some blatant, stripe through the scan or something that's going to hit all the bubbles or something stupid. And also to make sure that all the ballots are represented. There needs to be a way to go back to that. Before I turn this over, I don't want to talk too much longer, but I do want to just share one more thing, which is, let me pick a different one here. Okay, I guess I'll just share my desktop because it's not expanded yet. It's right here. Yeah. So the reason I wanted to mention is that in California and especially in San Diego, what I did was back in the 2008-2010 timeframe, we did a 2-year study of what they were doing here in San Diego. Really, really looked hard into it. They couldn't answer most of my questions, or they wouldn't. They didn't have anything documented. I had to really do a lot of work to try to get answers because it took forever. You know, I'd ask the question, we need clarification, can't answer it yet. You know, finally they answer the question, then go on to the next question. It took forever. That's why it took a couple of years. And I found out that they had to do this audit process where they do a 1% manual tally by law in California. I realized that's one way that we can have the election officials kind of check themselves as long as we're able to watch it very, very carefully. And what I learned was that most of these counties don't do it very well and actually violate the law. Eventually, we took San Diego County to court. We won so far, and they're appealing. But we do have a process. I just want to mention the name. It's called the snapshot oversight process, where we very, very carefully watch the audits. And in fact, I just had a conference call prior to this one, the people in Sonoma County who are the team there, and they're actually learning how to execute this. It's a lot of work for them to do the manual tally, and so if we can get these ballot images, it's really, really going to help us. And I think it's going to make their life easier, and it's going to be an asset for them to go forward. Well, I know that John has a lot of good things to say about his, ideas about ballot images and his. But we're both, very much of similar minds. This now we're calling the Open Ballot Initiative. So if you'd like to check it on Facebook and join our group, we can have more conversation. And my organization is called Citizens Oversight. We do election integrity, but also we're involved in some very big cases with regard to the nuclear plant shutdown and the storage of nuclear waste. So we have, more than just this as our focus. So that's I guess, in a nutshell, what the proposal is. Again, I'm working with the National Institutes of Standards and Technology to standardize these 3 pieces that we need. The cast vote record is proceeding pretty well. There's some things I need changed in it to make this work well. But once the standards are in place, you see, we really don't have to worry about whether this software is open source or closed source. It doesn't matter, because we can look at the data all the way from we can compare the paper ballots to the ballot images. We can go from ballot images all the way to the end and compare the data. Who cares who wrote the code? There can be no monkeying around with it if we can watch the data all the way through and reproduce the election completely. That's why I don't make I don't champion the open source as any kind of a solution. It doesn't solve very much if that's all you're doing. You have to do something with the data to be able to check it. And a lot of the advocates for open source, I know you mentioned the Prime 3 example that's been put forth as an example. That's not a working system. It's not really an operational. It's just a demo system. And whoever's championing open source, I beg to differ, because it really doesn't do what you need to watch the election effectively. All right, so thank you, Monta, for letting me speak. I'll let John talk now, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ray. And when you stop your screen share, that'll be great. We appreciate you being with us and sharing, your information and your view and thinking on this. Our next guest is John Roberts Brakey. A lot of us have heard of both Ray and John, and maybe Trachtenberg as well. But John is out of Arizona. He co-founded the Audit AZ organization, which stands for Americans United for Democracy, Integrity, and Transparency in Elections. And so he started working in this area in 2004 because he was the Democratic cluster captain that was overseeing 3 or 4 precincts, and he's found that some of these precincts were staffed with ideologically motivated poll workers that were controlling these polling stations. And so he kind of got involved with that and managed to decipher that this wasn't a good thing, and that was what launched him into this career and really getting involved with these elections. He also filed a lawsuit with Pima County along with the Democratic Party and helped to win the largest release of the databases in the history of electronic voting for the US. He was awarded the 2nd place as Arizona State Democratic Party Democrat of the Year. And he's a proud member of the Election Defense Alliance organization, which is a national election integrity group. And as we all know, he's been working now a lot and thinking a lot about the ballot images. And so I do want to share something that he brought for us to kind of give us an introductory look. And as soon as my screen will move, I had everything all set up and everything's moving around here, but let's see here. There we go. This is something he would like to share with us to kind of get us more educated on board visually as well. So here we go.
Thank you for inviting Ray Lutz and I to discuss this important subject of ballot images and election audits. To get a better understanding, please refer to my paper that will be out publicly in the next few days. These new digital scan systems counting hand-marked paper ballots were designed and could produce elections that are 1, transparent, 2, trackable, and 3.
There's no video here at all.
What you're looking at on the screen is the new ES&S DS850
Can anyone?
that I filmed in Waukesha, Wisconsin during this timed recount, December of 2016.
Are we seeing what we're supposed
No, we're not.
You need to mute yourself, Monta, so that your background noise doesn't cause your image to come forward.
Okay, so I thought that I hit share screen. I'm sorry, this is why we have Adria. And when we didn't have Adria to do this, I'm having to step up here. So thanks everyone for your patience. Let me try to do another share screen again, how it got onto sharing my screen. We'll just try to get this going here. We'll start over. Can anyone see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Now
Yeah.
let me get it full screen and we'll just start over so John's not interrupted. Okay, if we can all see this, that's great. Let's
Yes,
try.
we can.
Thank you for inviting Ray Lutz and I to discuss this important subject of ballot images and election audits. To get a better understanding, please refer to my paper that will be out publicly in the next few days. These new digital scan systems counting hand-marked paper ballots were designed and could produce elections that are 1, transparent, 2, trackable, and 3, publicly verified. What you're looking at on the screen is the new ES&S DS850 that I filmed in Waukesha, Wisconsin during the Stein recount, December of 2016. These digital scanners count about 300 ballots per minute. As the ballots go through the DS850, it takes a picture of both sides of the ballot. If the ballot image made is readable by using optical character recognition software known as OCR, and if it successfully lifts the data and it places the OCR data in a cast vote record known as CVR. Once that's done, it will place a serialized number to the ballot image file. If there is an ink cartridge installed and turned on, the 850 will put a serialized number sprayed onto the original ballot itself. Both numbers are reconciled in the ballot table. If a ballot image fails to be read properly, it will cycle the ballot to the upper bin, indicating that the ballot needs to be inspected. And if okay, it's run again. All of this is done in 1/5 of a second per ballot. By the presidential election of 2020, 85% of the country most likely will have a similar digital voting system. We are now about 40% national. In a recent case that we won, our judge asked the defendant, Pima County, this question: if you take the voted ballot, make a copy of them, and use those copies to count votes, what makes you think that you can destroy them? The judge recognized that the ballot images are an integral part of the chain of custody. He then ruled them from the bench that they are a public record and must be preserved. We are now in the second part of that case to have these ballot images released to the public. The status quo is fighting us on all fronts to prevent ballot images from being publicly released. It's as if they are protecting the right to cheat now or in some future election. What you're looking at is one of my favorite parts of the system is the cast vote record. It is quite an extensive document. This one is in Excel. It starts off on column A, as you can see, cast vote record, and it starts off for some reason at 9. Your votes take it all the way down. It would go down to 176,458, even though really the first 8 numbers aren't there. So it's 450. That's what it should be, the real number there. You can see the precincts are not sorted. You can see that the ballots are mixed, Republican, Democrats, if there's any Greens, you can see that there too. You can go ahead and go up here and sort, and you can sort, let's say, by precinct, which I've already pre-done, and you can see now I've got all precinct 01. I've also got it separated by Democrat and Republican. But what I haven't done is separate column D and have it by candidate and what kind of vote that candidate got. So I hit sort again, and then I come over to here, and then this is the other part of the cast vote record. You can see everything's sorted, and you can see that I have the results already pre-added up that I did myself. And I can take those numbers and check with the official results. And I also can go ahead, if I had the ballot images, click over here, find the number, and then go ahead and look up the actual ballot and compare it to the results all the way across this cast vote record. Now, I'm showing you what a ballot table looks like. Here is the cast vote record that is on the ballot image file. Here's the serial number that is printed on the ballot. And then this right here tells me what of the 6 machines, because Pima County has 6, actually printed the number on the ballot if they would have turned it on. Well, that's all I'm going to elaborate right now. I'm over my 5 minutes, and thank you.
Okay, great.
Geez, folks, I'm sorry it didn't play better. I don't know what happened there, but I think you kind of got the feeling of about what I pointed out, that 40% of the United States is actually using this system right now. And I'm finding in a lot of different parts of the country, like let's just use Arizona, we have 11 counties. And before I file a lawsuit, all 11 counties out of the 15 were destroying their images. And I'm not too sure about Yavapai County, but that's a different system. The rest of the 10 counties that are using the ES&S 850s and the 200s. The systems, really do create a really good high quality ballot image. even though the ones that I found that were released in Dane County were more of the lower quality because they choose to give them that way, which kind of strikes me. But I'm also finding that to be the general rule, that these images are being destroyed everywhere. That's an incredible thing to say, that they're destroying them, and they're destroying them like maybe they're protecting the right to cheat now or in some future election. In my state, I'm in a lawsuit. I already won the first part of the lawsuit, proving that they cannot be destroyed. I'm in the second part of a lawsuit saying, now we want them publicly. We want them to release. And if you don't want to put them online and put them by precinct, we will. So what did they do? They went ahead and took a strike all bill, the legislators, and called SB 1094. And they struck all the old language out of it, put new language in, trying to say that ballot images now must be treated like ballots and cannot be given out or made copies of or passed out. Now, we feel we're going to probably, that defies our records request, but it's just going to cause more litigation, more problems, because like I said, they're trying to protect they're trying to protect the right to cheat now in the future. Ohio, I worked with Bob Petrakis before the November election. He went ahead and sued 13 counties in the Secretary of State of Ohio because they have these same machines. And when they went into court, the Secretary of State's people came in and they said to the Your Honor, this suit is ridiculous because we never turned that feature on. We did not turn it on to make images. Well, Bob being new, and it was like, a suit put together real quickly, they got away with it because the machine doesn't work unless it makes a copy of the image first. These systems that are in place right now will go ahead, like I said in the presentation, the video, is that when that ballot goes through, it makes a copy of it. It works the technology is so advanced now, it actually lifts the text. And if the text is lifted properly to go into the CVR, it will assign a number to it. And then on the way out, it will put another number on it for it's trackable. Because as Mitch Trachtenberg said in his video, it's about access to the original ballots. And that's what I'm trying to do, is to get us that part. And the system was designed, but I'll say this. It's hard to believe that across this country, they're suppressing this knowledge. When the systems first came out, I got literature given to me by Susan Pinshaw out of Florida that they were advertising these great features, okay? And then all of a sudden, they weren't selling them. People didn't want them. I'd rather have my old stuff. The old stuff's wearing out. The old stuff used the old technology, which is going extinct right now. They have no choice but to use ballot image technology. What I'm looking to do is to try to go ahead and to get people to more understand that maybe we have something right now that could be very workable. And then what we need to do is put a plan together to go ahead and force these counties on a national level and even do some federal suits to go ahead and make sure that we protect these images, that we do make elections that are, transparent, trackable, and publicly verified, just like what Ray was talking about. I'm 100% with Ray and Trachtenberg. I don't think that the three people could be closer on a solution. It's just that somehow it's here already and they're hiding it. And that's the thing that's really incredible. They are not going to be able to buy the old system where they bounce light off a piece of paper and make a decision that way. I've worked in those databases for 10 years analyzing them. This is a superior system. What is there now that's going bye-bye, like Maricopa County, they're not going to be able to replace those machines and go back to the old mark sensor technology. It's digital all the way. That's the future. So other than that, I hope you got a good understanding from the three presentations. it's kind of like Christmas, past, present, and future. Okay. And it's, to me, it's a delight after all these years I've been studying elections to be here talking about solutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John and Ray, and to Mitch as well, who's not with us. But I wanted to say, I'm sure we have lots of questions. I want to let people, remind them they have a way to raise their hands, and folks on the phone call will try to just take people's questions as we can. But before we take some individual questions, I'd like to make a couple of points. I realized that the hand count, the redundancy features that everyone, I'm sure, agrees is a good idea. The redundancy features that we like do include hand counting, and certainly Ray's explanation of his experience trying to film the hand count and then coming up with, this ballot image idea that kind of sometimes people don't really know someone else is having the idea. I think that there's a lot of sense to that. The reason I brought up the Prime 3 is because they have that ballot, but I guess what we're saying is that we want to, that would be the original ballot in that Prime 3, even though it does have the barcode that they count with in the count that matches up with the paper ballot. And we were thinking of a hand count at the polls. I know there are dense voting districts and money involved, so a lot of people don't really like that. And again, we don't trust anybody, so all of the redundancies. And that would then, of course, talk about the machine count that did have the ballots with the same matching barcode that you could check, similar to this, but also the hand counts. And then what you guys are saying about taking, however we get them, those matched up, numbered, pieces of the ballot that are printed. We probably, we don't have a ballot image step that I'm as clear on with that, but so we might need to do the machine that you're talking about, John's machine that you showed us. That's probably not an off-the-shelf machine. Is it, John? Is that an off-the-shelf?
Parts of it is. It's a German machine. It's a very expensive machine. They sell it for $116,000. I'm not recommending it, but I do know that you can buy something comparable for Ray, probably better than this. For $16,000 to $20,000, Ray.
Yeah, probably about that or a little bit more, but it's far less than that. And by the way, I just want to point out that even though I talk about commercial off the shelf, the open ballot initiative that I described does not require that you use commercial off the shelf equipment. It's just that I believe that like in this case, you have that ES&S machine that John was showing. It takes the picture of the image and puts it in a file, but does more than that. It also resolves the vote at the same time. And in my mind, that isn't perfect to do it all at the same time. But then again, you know what? I'm happy if I get the ballot images, no matter how they're produced, as long as we can go back and see that it's fairly safe what they're doing. But it takes a little bit more work. If you just have one of these commercial off-the-shelf machines, there isn't anything that they can put in there to fool around with the images. There's not that vulnerability. So I thought that would be a little bit better. But it's probably going to be, we're going to have to live with whatever happens, and the election officials are going to be buying whatever they want to buy, regardless of what we say at Take Back Elections. What we're trying to do here, though, is to, with these standards that we're working on, is to entice them into a position where they're using machines that will allow us to see what they're doing and do almost a hand count if we want to do that. Because we can take those images that are going to look just like the ballot and look at them to our heart's content. And if somebody wants to do a hand count, go right ahead. I think better, because I see how intractable that is from my perspective, because I've watched it happen. Doing those hand counts is really, really difficult. It takes a lot of effort, and it is not perfect either. You know, these machines are actually really, really good at doing the counting. I'm not worried about the machines. What I'm worried about is humans manipulating what the machines do. That's really the danger here. So if you can find out, if you can watch the machines very, very carefully and see, yeah, they did a good job every step of the way, then you should use the machines because they're so much faster. It's like saying, well, I don't want to drive in a car, I'd rather walk. Well, you can do that. It's just a lot harder to get across the United States. And if cars exist, you say, well, they're not perfectly safe. Well, they're pretty safe. There's a few accidents here and there. But, you know, that's sort of comparable in that you have machines that if you use them right, they can really help us out. What I want to make sure is that as oversight people, and that's who I'm representing here. I'm representing the public that wants to oversee this stuff. I'm not representing the election officials. So I come into the game a little bit differently from these other people in the standards groups. The other people there, and I invite anybody to take part. It's at NIST. You can go in and take part in the standards being done today in those groups. You know, you can talk all you want on Facebook. The real action is being done at NIST and the Election Assistance Commission. They're deciding how these election officials will run their show. And so anyway, what I'm saying is most of the people there are either manufacturers of machines or elections officials. And I'm one of the very few representatives of the public that are trying to watch this very carefully. And I'm trying to get as much as I can out of the election officials and the standards process so that we can let them use the machines because they are going to, but still be able to follow this election all the way through. And as you can, John, I wasn't able to hear everything you said because I had to take a phone call, but I know there's going to be a lot of foot dragging even to get the ballot images out of these election districts. They're not going to just give this up because they know that once we get these ballot images for every single ballot in the election, they're toast. They cannot very easily fix the elections anymore. And that's what I want to get. Once we get that and we can check it, we won't have to check it all the time because they know, look, we're not going to be able to fix the election anymore because now they can see everything that's going on.
And that's what it's about. It's about taking away their impunity to cheat. And how do we do that? Is making them paranoid that they might get caught. Because I've fought a couple of elections before, because I always work before the election. I don't wait until afterwards. And so basically, that's what we have to wind up doing. Because you're not gonna. They use the system to fight us, okay? And they'll fight us. So I was in one case for 9 years. And I decided that the only way we can beat them is to be proactive and take away that impunity. And,
I will agree with you, John, because on this point I want to make is that I thought that by doing really good audits and watching the audit really carefully, we developed the snapshot protocol so that we would be able to really carefully watch these audits. It does work. Yep. We can watch the audit if they cooperate with us. We need a little bit more information than they normally provide, and they sometimes don't provide it. But we know now that almost all of the counties in California that are supposed to do these audits don't do them right. They do them in such a manner that it covers up possible massive election fraud. It would be covered up by the procedure that they use rather than detecting it. And I've come to the conclusion that these election officials will do anything they can to get out of a little bit of work and to make sure that anything that happens will just be covered up because they don't want anyone to suspect that we're trying to make people uneasy about the fact that our elections aren't trusted. There's no rigging, as Hillary Clinton said. There's no rigging in the election. This is one thing I agreed with Trump on. Very few things do I do. I agree that there was probably, rigging in the election, and he said that there was. Now, the thing is that this is, I believe, the best course of action based on my many years of looking at this. I agree with John. We're both in the same boat. basically I had a little bit different idea in 2008, but the first step is to get those ballot images. They're going to kick and scratch and not let us get at them. My view is forget taking them all the way back to hand counting. Look, there's some counties that will do it. They're really small. Maybe most of the counties, because most of them are small, but most of the votes are in really big counties, and that's where they all use machines. It's weird though too, I have to mention this NIST group, they're standardizing. They have a weird concept that they don't standardize anything that's not a machine. They won't standardize on how well to do hand counting, for example, because that's not a machine. And so they won't standardize on the methodology or anything like that. A paper system, I think paper systems are sometimes great. All paper, you don't have any machine involved, and they blow a cork. They don't know how to deal with that.
That's right.
So we have a mindset, issue to get around here. It's at this point in time, I'm telling you, at this point in time, there's no way that these election officials are going to drop back and do all hand counted elections. Forget it. I think the way to go is to let them do what they want to do, which is these machines. But this ballot image approach, as John has found, and I've, surmised in 2008, and as Trachtenberg was saying, is the best way to handle these elections. It's like a backup of the ballots. Right now, the ballots are destroyed in 22 months. Once they get turned into ballot images, they can be kept forever. Boy, that scares them to death right there. They don't want things kept forever. They think it'll come back to haunt them, and it will. But really, why should we destroy the evidence of what happened? They won't even let me get to the ballots here in San Diego. We've asked to get to the ballots for the primary because we think there was some tampering going on. They keep them for 22 months, but they say, sorry, they're sealed now. You can't get to the ballots at all. What is the use of keeping them for 22 months if no one can look at them, really? So that's just a couple of additional points. I guess if there's questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple other points here. I'm seeing a few little comments here, and I know we will take some questions, but I wanted to essentially mention and speak to a couple of things. Certainly the standards and the protocols that we would want to write and recommend if it's kind of, I guess, like NIST, only, we're writing the standards from the people's position, like you're going to NIST representing, the people's position a little bit more so than the guys who are representing, the machines and the election officials per se. So in a way, we're a bit like that. So the protocols, could be made to be followed, with our approach and legislation that we're going to be using in the ballot initiative approach, and this would be one part of it. So that's what we're writing. And to that, also, I wanted to mention the hand count. Like you were saying, let the smaller ones do the hand counts 100%. And maybe, yes, and we do have a protocol for the hand counts, a standard for the hand counts as well. And we're certainly open to tweaking that with anyone else's best ideas, before we're done. But also the larger counties, that would, certainly use the machines and have a harder time of hand counts at the very minimum, some type of truly impossible way for them to know ahead of time which precincts or polls would be counted with, an automatic hand count before the ballots left the polls. Everyone would be sort of on their toes because they would know that just like, the little balls that you count out the number for people playing bingo, somebody's going to have these a way of selecting very randomly certain precincts that are going to, and districts and polls that are going to have to perform a hand count, but maybe not all of them. So, that might also help to keep them more realizing they're going to get caught, or they have, the risk factor for them, is greatly enhanced. So a couple of those things, and I do want to see if anyone
Well,
has.
if I can just jump in for a second, Monta. that essentially is the audit process that you know, a lot of places are using even more. In California, I think it's pretty rigorous. They choose random precincts and they have to cover all the races. A lot of these states like Florida is only one race and one random precinct. I mean, you know, 1% of the precincts for one random race, and they pick a judge, you know, or something that's not even competitive. So it's, California has a pretty good audit process, but as I said, even with the laws in the books, we're trying to get them fixed. Nobody does those right. You can't rely upon the election officials or anybody to do their work right. That's a big problem. You say, well, we're going to do it a certain way. Go try to train those people to do it. They don't do it. We did a review in 2008 of how many precincts could just add up the number of ballots that they had, not count them, not determine the vote, just count the ballots and match that up to the paperwork. How many ballots were provided, how many were voted, how many were still blank, and how many were spoiled. It's supposed to all add up. How many eventually are scanned should also match. And only 15% of the cases did they match up. And that's terrible. That's terrible. So they don't do what you hope to do. What we're hoping to get is to intercept those ballots as early as possible, get the ballot images before anybody does any counting so that we can get back to that. But
I feel like that's
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just had to say that the audit process, I've witnessed it. We have lawsuits in process. They don't do that right.
Yeah, and so, you know, it might not be a good thing, but in a form of a redundancy along with this, we wouldn't say in place of this, but I certainly, you know, get your point. And I know that in introducing John, you know, he got involved because the poll workers weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing, and they were essentially cheating. And so we do recognize, you know, that could be some potential problem as well. So I want to ask if the audience has some questions, and I have a few more too here. And I wondered if Joanne might have
question.
And with who is speaking?
Frank Henry from Cottonwood, Arizona.
Please go ahead.
The question I have is both Ray and John and yourself have amplified it very clearly that the election officials do what they damn well please. And ironically, it's not just the election officials. It's all elected and appointed officials. When it comes to voting and voting rights, they are doing as they damn well please and be damned with the voters. And I'm supporting John. I know I'm his backup here up in Yavapai County. And we've been fighting this in 10 years at least here in Arizona. For instance, if you incorporate any laws involving the image, the ballot image, it must be done within the time frame of the closing count and the formal canvassing. Otherwise, it'd be a useless exercise given to the voters, because if the voters find there's an error, they won't be able to get under the 5-day window to complain to a court. It's very neatly sewn up that they want the voters to go home and shut their mouths. Okay, I'll let you take over from here.
Yeah. Well, thanks for your input. And it is, we're just seeing how intractable and how difficult the problem is. So we need all of us. Thanks everyone for, again, being on the call, and our guests and everyone for really trying to all be on the same team. And, you know, even though we may not agree absolutely all the time on everything, I think we all know that we want the same outcome, and maybe there are ways that we can ultimately really feel like we're pretty much on the same page as we work through these problems and see just what we're facing. Does someone else have a comment or a question that they would like to ask right now?
Yeah, I'm ready. George.
Yes, hi, George.
Hi. Well, I'm interested in this idea that the election officials form a bulwark against the people, that they've got their own little empire of power and they want to sustain that, and they don't really care about public input. You know, when I look at election integrity efforts across the country, and I hear about the reports, I wish, I wonder if there's a way we can identify the areas of the country or the areas of each state where the culture of election administration is perhaps corrupt. Where are the problems that we need to address as a whole in order to turn this this question of the abuse of power by the election administrators into something that is recognizable nationwide as an issue. That's the perspective I'm coming at it from. But I also want to get back to Ray. We had talked earlier, but you mentioned tonight that that you didn't really feel that there, you know, that the need for open source is too significant. If and I tried to grasp that as you went over it. Could you explain that a little bit more? Your feelings with regards to why open source is not necessarily preferable.
Okay, thank you for the question. Basically, what do you get out of open source? What you have to do if you have open source is you have to have people who are experts at reviewing source code go in and review the code and give it their stamp of approval. Even if somebody gives code their stamp of approval, even if it's open source, there's bugs and backdoors found all the time. Just because something is open source does not mean it's bug-free or anything else. The reason people look to open source and the reasonable, like, let me argue their side for a second. They say, why should we trust Microsoft or Google or one of these other big entities to do this? We don't trust them, and so we don't want to trust their code. Well, the point is that if you can see the data flow through the code, you don't have to know anything about the code, who wrote it or anything else. You can look at the data from point A to point B and see if it worked out right.
You mean in the audit, in an audit process?
Well, in the proposal for getting the ballot images in the open ballot initiative, these separate groups would do a 100% audit. They'd basically redo the election in their own software. You have multiple different software running from different groups. Some of it can be open source, some can be closed. I don't really care. And nor do I want to rely upon some experts to go into the source code and try to find the back doors. Why? Because I'm a programmer and I can't even find all the bugs in my own code. And I can look at someone else's code and I say, oh my God, I have to try to figure this out. It is very hard to do. It's very hard to prove that the code doesn't have something in it. I've thought about this problem a lot, and it comes down to the critical point of making the ballot images. We got to get the ballot images at the earliest point possible so that from then on, it doesn't matter what happens. If I can go back to the very, very source of the data and redo it, I don't care what you do. We can compare our final result and see if we differ. You can run all the way around to Spain and around the world and have closed source or open, and it doesn't matter to me. What I want to do is get basically these processes that handle the ballots to be services. We need to get the ballot images locked up into a form where nothing can change. Once they advertise the full ballots, or what they need to do is advertise just the digital signatures, thereby they can do that even in the early vote by mail process where they're scanning the ballots but not counting them yet. And I know that the ES&S machine that we saw counts the ballots and processes them right away. But if you use the commercial off-the-shelf approach, you would just get the scanned images.
That's right.
There are standards to how to handle that. If your team, and I think it should be done this way, the team that makes the ballot images is the only critical path in the system. Once you get that past that point, the ballot images could be submitted to Google services.
Yep.
Amazon has services, and they're just going to be available for free. Once these standards are produced, the images, the processing will be for free. But I will say this, and I encourage Monta to go this way. We know that the NIST people are not standardizing anything to do with paper management or counting the votes by hand. They're not going to standardize anything like that. This is an opportunity for Take Back the Vote to go ahead and standardize on how to do count, hand counting properly, all the procedures. Here are the standards to do that. And go ahead and produce the standard, because we know that they're not going to do that. And a lot of counties that are small enough may opt to do that. I don't think the big ones, the ones we're interested in, the really big counties like Los Angeles on down, the top 500 counties in the nation comprise about 70% of the votes. Those top 500 counties, none of them will use hand counting. They're too big, but that's 70% of the votes. Then the other, that's only about 5% of the counties. The other 95% of the counties, you can use hand counting if you want. They're little teeny tiny counties with only one precinct. It's not valid for them you shouldn't force them to use machines. I agree. Let them use hand counting, no problem. But the top 500 counties, which are the targets of our initiative, our first targets are 175 counties. That comprises half of the voters in the nation, only the top 75. The top 300 counties comprise 60%, and the top 500, 70%. Those are our first targets. Those all use machine counting. They're all going to be subjected to, hopefully, these standards that we're coming up with. But the rest of the counties, Take Back Elections, go ahead and standardize on hand counting. I encourage you to do that. All those other counties need direction. No one is telling them the right way to do it. They're just kind of doing it haphazardly at this point. I know how to count.
Jump in here real quick, is that the process that we're talking about, it's about chain of custody. And we want to open source that chain of custody. We want to see it follow all the way through. Good elections are about chain of custody. The elections that we have in this country are about procedures. And I just want to say that most of the people in these election departments, and I do a lot of election departments, okay, are really great people, but they follow procedures. And certain procedures they cannot do. And one of those procedures is to verify or count something twice, okay? And that is part of the culture in the election department because it's by law. It's crazy when you dig into how elections work. Like, for example, not to pick on California, but, Ray has already brought it up. He had to sue to try to get at the last 35% of the vote. And that is where most likely that the system was gamed, because in that primary that he was after is that they were micro-targeting and using a different test system. They were not rigging an election. They were rigging how people had their vote counted. They blocked people from becoming to vote for Bernie Sanders because they woke up and found out that they were with the Libertarian Party and they couldn't even get a provisional. Those are part of the games that were played. And I would say this, is that those is what Ray fought. So that's a procedure that Ray helped correct in California and still correcting, is to get everything counted, and he's still trying to get the provisional part, because they can force people into provisionals by knowing how to use the voter database. Example, possibly Georgia. Everybody may know that one of their poll books were stolen for the whole county. And that they could have changed things and forced people into provisionals. There's such gamesmanship that's used in elections that we have to have elections that are transparent, trackable, and publicly verified.
Let me say one more thing to George's question. The open source concept is primarily targeted at voting machines, and that, except just maybe touchscreen voting and so forth. That even if you have open source, there's no way that they've proven this, there's no way to actually be confident that there isn't something else in that software that's going to change your vote. Even open source, those machines will fail. There's failure modes where they will just die. And then how do you vote? They just lost all the votes that were in there for all day. How do you get them back? There's a big problem. It doesn't matter what kind of open or closed. Unless you have that paper ballot where the person votes in real time by marking that ballot and they see, okay, I'm marking this candidate. In their eye, they mark it themselves and they see it and it's recorded on paper, recorded right there. No electronics or software. That's essential to the way things work today. Now, I'm open to some other things, such as maybe, and this is going to take more work, you complete your ballot, and then like you correspond with the bank, you take your cell phone and you take a snapshot of yourself in your smartphone of your ballot and send it in. There would have to be a lot of hooks in there, but since you're the person scanning your ballot, that eliminates that critical path to move it from paper form into image. And that's the critical path where we have to go back and check to see that they're doing right. There may be a way to deal with that. I'm not proposing that at this time. But if we get all of the issues dealt with, such as secure that we know who the voter is and they're the one voting, that we can tell, we can audit the process, that it's secure and private. There's a number of issues that I've put forward in the legislation proposal that we put forward to I guess I don't have it here, but I was going to show it to you, but there's a bill in California called AB 1403, which has to do with email voting. They just said, oh, well, the military is allowed to fax in their vote. Well, let's let them email it in too. I'm sorry, fax is bad enough. Email is terrible. It's got all kinds of problems. Anybody can intercept it any way along the way. They can interject new ballots. No one would know what's going on for those military voters. So it's just for the military. But if we can fix that, it would enable a lot of voters if they could complete their vote, say with their smartphone. The problem is you can't audit it. You can't get back to what they actually did. You never can audit it. So we got to get to that paper. When certain people say, okay, I have open source solution, usually what they're talking about is a voting machine, and that they're saying you can rely upon it because it's open source. I'm sorry, I don't rely, I still don't, I can't trust it even if it's called open source. And I've seen a lot of open source. A lot of it is very crappy. A lot of it is very crappy, probably crappier than professional, commercial stuff, and more dangers in it. So just because it's open source does not, and a lot of people say, open source, that solves it. I just have to say those words and it solves it. No, it doesn't solve it for me.
What's that, John?
I said there's other people who probably got questions.
Yes. So I'm seeing some things in the chat, and I'd like to kind of bring up some things people are mentioning in the chat, which is the vote by mail that you kind of just mentioned again, Ray, and how the whole thing of, there was a really good, you should go back and look at both the Prime 3 and the vote by mail meetings that we had. They are in our archives. And I would like John to speak a little bit. He was at the vote by mail tour there in Phoenix. And I think that the imaging part, I don't know where you see is the correct place to try to put in what you're doing in a vote by mail protocol, shall we say, and all of the things that you saw that you might like to speak to there as just the next topic, how the imaging would fit into that.
Well, it's a must, because that's where the problem is, okay? In my state, okay, we will take 2% of the precinct vote, and we may count a presidential, a senator, And but at least that's all by a precinct, okay? So you're actually looking at a precinct. In Pima County, we don't count 2%, we count 4%. That's because they had me falsely arrested when I caught them trying to rig the vote by mail recounts, okay? And the precincts, and that was back in 2006 or 7. The vote by mail, when they run a batch, they'll actually, the machines are running, they don't separate the ballots out by precinct. That's done inside the computer, okay? And so they'll run, and all of a sudden they'll stop and say, oh, we're gonna make a batch. So they'll produce a batch of 200 ballots. And these 200 ballots could be from 200 different precincts. And they say, go ahead, add and check them up. Well, you know, I believe everybody knows about Volkswagen now, okay? And then secondly, you don't need Volkswagen software to do what they did to cheat, because once you add the 200 up, what does it mean? They're from 200 different precincts, okay? I see what I call the splits. It has me very concerned in certain elections. I'll give you an example. In the Bernie Sanders, in the state presidential primary of last year in March, in fact, I sued the whole state on that one. Bernie Sanders won the vote, the precinct vote, by 59%. Hillary won the vote by mail by 60%. And then Bernie goes on and wins the provisionals by 63. That is a 39-point difference, which is unheard of.
Right.
Now, I don't know if it was ballot harvesting. I don't know if it was ballot stuffing. I don't know if the system was hacked, okay? But you know what? All three of those things I should not have to worry about.
Right.
And that's why it's a must that we have these images. I now have cast vote record files, and I have one that's 424,000 voters. And for the first time ever, I was able to go ahead and put it on an Excel, sort all these random ballots and build precincts. And I could look at the numbers, but it's not good to add up, because without the images to verify, I'm back to the same thing. And so the point I'm trying to say is this. It's the easiest place to steal in my state. I know that in California, just like what Ray was suing on, that 35% of the end vote could have been gained, because that's where the impunity was. In my state, it's in the images. They can steal with impunity. And that is why we have to have systems that are trackable, that are transparent, and that are publicly verified. And of course, taking it back to the original image. So I think this is that, and what are we talking about doing is to make these vote by mails verified. Yeah, we can make sure the black box is not stealing. We cannot stop ballot stuffing by a printer who, in this country, who prints the ballot. Well, somebody's got to do that. There is, but does the printer have to mail them out? Does the printer have to receive them? Does the printer have to scan the signature and verify with a computer? I don't think so. That is a problem in vote by mail in different states. And we know how the Whitney Bows in California could be programmed to go ahead and say, hey, George Riley, I know that you vote by mail, and I know that you are for this candidate, and I don't want him to win, so we're going to count your vote last where we can hack it or play around with it. Those are the difficulties with vote by mail, because I'll say this, from my studies all these years, power will find a way to do it. We will block one thing, they'll come up with another. It's a yin and a yang, and it's about people like us who are here tonight that are going to make that difference. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John. On the vote by mail, I do have a question a comment to answer something you said, because I specifically asked them in Phoenix, and yes, they have a printer who, sends out, prints and sends out the ballots. And of course, the chain of custody is from the moment, you have a ballot printed or you have a template for a ballot to be printed on. So there's a lot of, really worrisome things with vote by mail, even though it seemed like some of the process seemed okay with that particular thing. But I guess in your case, you would, even though I'm not really fond of vote by mail, and I think needs a lot of considerations, but what Trachtenberg said and you know, what we know is happening across the nation, we just have to look at what can we do. And in writing Take Back Elections language, we do have an option to eliminate some things, just as we have an option to write a protocol for hand count and make it be what the officials have to follow by law, so their hands aren't tied or directed in a particular way, other than what we want them to be. So I do know that they do print them and send them out. And so when they get them in, then we saw that they had to verify their signatures. At what point would you put the imaging in place?
Oh my God, it would have to be as soon as the ballots are put through the machine. That's where that process would start, and the tracking and having numbers that tie the image back to that original ballot. And because, you know, just like Trachtenberg said, it's about access to the original ballots. And in my state, we cannot have a recount unless the results are within 1/10 of 1%. I can ask to go look at the ballots, but I can't touch them. I can't count them. But you know what? I can match them because I got the image. And I've just checked them all. Now I want to verify that this image is real before I certify that this election was good. Okay? And by using like a Dr. Phil Stark type method, you could pull and then determine with a certain certainty that the copies that we do have, which are hand marked, because, you know, I'm not for one for spending $6,000 on a machine that replaces my 2 fingers and a pencil or a pen. And I want to see that type of a fingerprint, because if you look at a lot of ballots, you'll find that people do mark with different colors, different ways, and it's not a signature, but my God, it's not bad. I know that programs like Fraction Magic, which I was involved with Bev on that very heavily, and Fraction Magic 6, if you look at it, where I talk about how insiders and hackers, because I've caught these people, okay? And the situation there is that we just got to have where it's publicly verified at the end, and nothing less.
Right. Are there any other questions from our viewer, or, you know, from the attendees here? Speak up or raise your hand. Well, we are having a nice conversation on our chat as well, which we'll make available too. And I want to say something, if you could speak to 2 more things, John. You brought up in that vote by mail tour the whole thing about, you know, the machines, and maybe this, I don't know, it would probably be certainly less likely with an off-the-shelf kind of a situation, but some of the machines like the VWs were able to know when they were about to be tested and all of that. I want you to speak to that, as well as to the fact that you found in the off-the-shelf, maybe it's there as well as the other machines, where there's sort of like the ability to access with the internet, with, you know, it's just in the machine built in, that the capabilities there. So would you speak to those 2 things?
I'd be glad to, but, you know, I'm not an expert on that. I just can tell you right now that it just takes one insider and other people looking a different way and following procedures of how it really works. And there's different ways. You know, I've seen, like, for example, in the RTA election I was in for 9 years in a lawsuit, that they went ahead and they used the memory cards and they pre-stuffed them with positive and negative numbers, and they were switching votes that way. And we know they were doing it because the guy confessed, okay? And under a bad situation. And then on top of that, they owned the machine that only had 2 uses. One was to measure the moisture content of corn, or to program the memory card. The newest thing that blows my mind, which makes me angry, is that our FBI director is a liar. When I was in Wisconsin, you know, I went up and put 2 teams up there, you know, and I was tracking the counties that refused to hand count. They want to go ahead and do the old ATM trick, you know. You go to the ATM and you pull a slip and say, oh, gee, something's not right here. Give me another one, like you expect to get something different. They refused to hand count. Most of those counties that refused to hand count I found that the FBI director lied when he said that our machinery was not connected to the internet. The DS200s in Milwaukee and Waukesha modem in their results through an internet connection using a SIM card. Yes, it's supposedly secure, even though a California report just came out, and it's in my report, saying that it was very easily to be hacked, okay? And those things, it's just hard to believe that he would get up there at Congress and tell them that it was secure. There are so many different ways that these things can be gamed, that we have to have some way of hand counting, verifying. And you certainly can hand count ballot images. And there is a system that's in my paper that comes out of Wisconsin, that you take the images and you hand count them with a group of people using clickers, which is a very fast method if you put the teams together, and you'll be able to watch that. And that brings the point. The paper I have now is, if anybody wants it, they can email me, but I ask you at this point is not to share it until the public release. It needs an abstract. It's quite an in-depth paper, and I've been working on it for really about 6 months. And but I had to go through the experience that I had to do in Wisconsin, Arizona, lawsuits, and then of course with Bob Petrakis, because I put Bob up to going ahead and filing that lawsuit in Ohio. And so anyway, my email address is johnbrakey@gmail.com. And please contact me, and I'd be glad to forward this thing off to you for your review and comments. And if you see some, better way of phrasing things, I could certainly use that. And if anybody's a writer, boy, help me get an abstract, okay? To get it down to 400 or 500 words, because right now this document is 6,000, and it's really a study and a paper that has incredible things that we know that's going on.
Well, I just want to thank everyone, both our attendees and our guests, for all of our commitment here. And I know we have our work cut out for us, and we would like to ask you to join our work in Take Back Elections, because we actually are working and trying very hard to make sure that what we write and all is the right thing, and it's doable, and then it makes sense, because we do plan to put what we put together to really change the entire election process with all the different pieces in place into law, so that, John, you won't have to feel so frustrated with the law. We're going to fix that. And
Ray's he's a frontline man like me. I consider myself a social gadfly, okay? A good one. Who works with character, capacity, credibility, civility, citizenship, country, and the big one is courage. And I know Ray has a lot of that.
Yes, and we want to thank, absolutely, Ray, thank you for your work. You've taken your lawsuits as well. And, you're talking a lot about the, the standards and what the elected officials won't do. So we'll just write the language, and the election officials will have to follow it. So we want to make sure that before we're done, everyone, including you gentlemen, can, see our final work and tweak it, and, hopefully everyone will be pleased and we'll move forward. So I'm going to just say to everyone, please spread the word about all of our efforts here, and join us on Take Back Elections on the Facebook group and the other organizations here, and let's all work together, and visit our website to find and look at our other meetings like this. So good night, everyone.
Any more questions?
Thank you.
If we have more, yes. If you have.
Was it Ray or John that said audits are seldom done right? And that seems, although the states aren't harmonized, from a federal perspective, all the states are different. It seems to me that auditing would be something that could be standardized at NIST, for example. Ray.
Yeah, they do have a number of, they're working on that. They had an auditability group, And they have right now just put forward a number of different audits, mostly at my urging, to address the various types of audits that you can do. The problem with audits, the big problem with audits, the way they're implemented now, is the election officials are auditing themselves.
Yeah.
That's like asking, people when you're speeding on the freeway to pull over and give yourself a ticket. How many people are going to do that? So really no one. You ask the election officials to turn themselves in and point out when they're making a mistake. Unless you make it an independent audit, you have to have someone that's not the election official that's auditing them. It's just nonsense. There's no such thing as a self-audit that's any good. Try that with a tax man. We're going to audit you. I'll tell you what, you audit yourself. You audit yourself and tell us that when you're breaking the law, no one would step forward. Okay, that's exactly the kind of nonsense they've got in place now, where the election officials just scam the audit so that they never get caught. It's just unless you have it independent, and that's why the scheme that I put forward, where no one is trusted, you can't trust anybody. This is the unique case here, and the only people that can actually be trusted completely is the general public, and no one in particular. And that's why you need to have what I think is the way to do it, is these redundant processing. No, I don't trust people in precincts to hand count all the ballots. We've got too many precincts in San Diego. There's 1,500 of them, and I don't trust them. I don't trust people anywhere. So that's the story with audits.
I live in Washington, D.C., and it's a fairly small area in terms of, and it's very accessible. All the precincts are within a bus ride away.
I thought you were in Homer, Alaska. I thought you were in Homer, Alaska.
Well, I lived up there for 25 years.
Okay.
But in my experience, it seems as if in the various precincts, the people that are hired to earn $100 a day or whatever their per diem is for that day, they're often friends of friends and who get in on this little piecework, and they're older often, and it's a long day. You start at 6:30 and you're out by 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night, and by the end of the day, you're pretty tired. And being sharp on what is going on at that critical moment when the final tally is getting spit out of the machine, it takes some special training or you have to be alert to know what you're looking for in precincts. How many precincts are there in the country?
Well, it's a lot, because there's about 8,000 election districts.
So how do we get more young people trained to step up and learn how to be an auditor, for example, or learn how to watchdog the provisional ballots or the vote by mail stuff?
What we're trying to do, George, is to get oversight of the audits, because we know that they're doing them themselves. But if we're watching the audit really, really carefully, then it can become kind of like a third-party audit. If we can watch them and we can make sure that they're not cheating on the audit, it can be a really, really good tool for us. The way they handle the ballots here in San Diego is about as much as I want to see from the precinct. They have the people fill them out and they put them in a box, and then secure the box and ship them someplace where we can oversee everything and watch it, because there's just too many precincts. And I've watched them try to stuff the actual ballot box. There's been people actually with guns drawn over the ballot boxes in some of the precincts in the East County out here, where there's a bunch of rednecks, fighting over what they want to put in the box. It's not pretty to to say, okay, we're going to let the precinct count these things. I say keep that whole sensitive issue out of that area. You don't want to put that in the hands of locals and have this hot potato in their hands of trying to count this. Like you say, end of the night, everybody's super tired. Now you're going to want to count these for the next maybe many hours of work, especially in California where there was dozens and dozens of items on the ballot. It's going to take hours, and a lot of times you don't get it right. You know, they count one precinct in the 1% manual tally. It would take a team more than a day, sometimes 2 or 3 days, to count that precinct and get it right. And they were just comparing with the computer. And so if you're going to count it from scratch, you really need 2 teams on each precinct to individually count it, so you're not just relying upon one. You have to have 2 teams to count it independently and then compare their result. It's very time consuming, and really, unless you're just a little tiny itsy bitsy little county, I don't think it's really feasible. And I think the activists should re-examine what they're fighting for if they're saying we want all hand counted paper ballots. I published a comparison, and you know, if we get the ballot images, trust me, think about it. Ballot images, at least what they have to do is they have to make the end of the election match those ballot images. If there's any fixing along the way, it's really hard to get it all fixed. And that, from that standpoint, we're a long way ahead to get that and not require the onerous hand counting. You know, you say, oh, we're going to be writing standards and getting the elections officials to follow them. Baloney. You guys aren't going to be able to get any election officials to do anything. I can't even get them to follow the laws in the books. What makes you think they're going to follow some small Facebook group that says, oh, we're going to write the standards for you? They don't care. They're just going to do whatever they have to by law, the absolute minimum. And I found you write standards, they're not going to follow the standard unless they're obligated to do so for some reason. Either it's because they can't run their business without the standard, or it's a law. Otherwise, they'll just blow you off and say, goodbye, we're not going to talk to you.
Right.
I'll just add one thing to that, is that I am for hand counting, okay? And I would say that the presidential election, you know, young people need to be involved. They come in, that they count it like money before they ship it right off. I think that there has to be some of that going on, and I think we have to fight for it because we're probably not going to get it. But I do know one thing: these images are real. It's what the machine counts. The machine does not count the original ballot; it counts the copy of it, and the original is what we go back to verify with. And I know that I can go ahead, if they put them online, I can go ahead on a CVR. I can go ahead and retotal certain races very quickly. And I'm very surprised how good the system really is. It's like, it was really like somebody built it to be audited. Oh my God, it was. It was used by bankers to track their documents. That is where the 850 came from. And these machines could be to do that, but they don't want to do it. And we have to force them by litigation if necessary, because they're breaking the law. And when we go in, if you do the law right, you'll get your money back for suing them. Don't count on it, but you might. Because what we do is we use the public records request laws, and we use the Mandamus Act. And the Mandamus Act basically is this: Your Honor, could you order these people to follow the law? And that is where we win, is to go ahead. And those ballot images being destroyed is against the federal law because it's in the chain of custody. And that is a fight that we have to have right away, because I'm already worried about elections coming up for the next 2 years, and elections now. We need to demand these images now. File a simple records request. Hey, I want those images from the last election. And by the way, make a claim on the next one. Then they're going to write you back and say, hey, we haven't got nothing. Then I have a blueprint of lawsuits that you bang them with. Hopefully we can find funding. Hopefully we're going to be able to meet with some other bigger groups to show how important it is, because if we want a chance to take this country back, we have to have elections that are transparent, trackable, and publicly verified.
Absolutely. Thank you. And, you know, we are actually a little over 2 hours. We'd be happy to take more questions. I kind of thought that we were sort of through with the questions, but that was a good question.
I want to thank you, Monta. I'm going to have to get going, but it's been a great meeting, and I appreciate the meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank
very
you,
much.
Ray.
Thank you, Ray. Good seeing you again.
And just to remind everyone, including Ray, that we will be planning to write this into law and pass it. That's what we're doing right now, is trying to essentially, make it what we believe fits that we want and put it into law. So no, we certainly don't think people will listen to a little Facebook group, but we think they might have to listen when we get it on the ballot and pass it. And I think a lot of common people will understand the problems that we have. And, I think that we can have some good success. And if anyone has any final question for John, otherwise we'll conclude our meeting. Well, it looks like everyone's at least as satisfied as we can be in the moment, and we're going to keep on doing our work and just invite everyone to both share about what we're doing with anyone who's interested so that we can get our part in place and we can support people like John and Ray with their work. And, as a redundancy, I think it's certainly something that makes sense. One thing we can talk about too is the ballot of record at some point, which would be probably the paper ballot. I guess it would go back to that. And then the other thing would just simply be other pieces that we've talked about today to get those as good as we can get them and move on forward. So yes, we all kind of feel the urgency in terms
Well, you still got 16 people on, and so I guess there's interest, and I'll pop in one more question if I can.
Go ahead, George. Really fast.
Well, I'm really interested in this administrator situation. I can remember going to see the premiere showing of a film on electronic voting, and in the audience, it was a preview showing, and in the audience were there were election administrators from Virginia and Maryland and DC and all over. And I was stunned at how they loved these machines. They didn't see any problem with them at all. It was going to make their job easier. And what did strike me was I got the sense that they didn't really care.
Yeah.
They wanted their paycheck and they wanted it easy.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of talk here tonight about administrators, election administrators, and how they're really, there's a lot of problem there. On the other hand, we know about, I forget her name, from New York State that does a hand count.
Virginia,
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah. And, so we know there are good ones and bad ones. But again, are there any books written, or has Palast or anybody done any analysis of where the bad spot, where the culture,
I have. It's an incredible culture. And, and it all starts with a guy named R. Doug Lewis. Okay. And R. Doug Lewis came out of the Nixon White House, and he ran the election center, and he has taught and certified election directors. And I swear to God, he must recruit sociopaths. Okay. And he's taught these people that a good elections administrator is an administrator who knows how to hide all the warts. Now, what kind of children would you have if you taught them those kind of things? Okay. On top of that, I asked my elections director, many years ago when I learned this, and he says to me, yep, I learned that I did a good job when I wake up in the morning and my name is not in the paper. And, these election directors are taught that it's very important to keep the faith of the people that everything is fine. But if you lose that faith, you could lose your job. Do you follow me?
Yes.
So don't be so transparent, because you're going to be transparenting yourself out the door. Okay? That culture has to change, and it has to start with the administration of, I'm hoping that Maricopa elections, that they will bring an outsider in, not keep the old crew. I'm hoping that that they'll bring somebody to bring them into the revolution of the digital, and that's part of the solution. But I hope
So
I
you
answered-
think that the point at which the whole thing turns is the fact that the individual, this whole issue that came up with when Trump questioned the legitimacy of our elections. Oh, you can't do that. There was a traumatic response to that because the American people lose faith in our elections. You can't say that, and that seems to me what this fellow R. Doug Lewis was indicating in this.
Yes.
In the people that he was training.
But Trump, he's all over the board. You don't know what's going to come out of his mouth next.
Can I research?
make a
Can I
comment?
Google him and pull up information?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Can I Google him and come up
Oh,
with?
absolutely. And the Election Center out of Houston, and then put down R. Doug Lewis. You're going to find a lot of stuff on this guy. Amazing what he's done. His university is Alabama, and he certifies these guys. And that way they can go into the bigger cities because they got the certification.
Oh wow! So it's like that School of the Americas kind of.
Yes. Yeah, I would say, I've never heard it framed that way, but I would say so. I really would.
Yeah.
If I may make a comment in here,
Yes, go ahead.
this is Jim Soper. There is something of a book about how to do it right. If you want to dig up the stuff about R. Doug Lewis, the Law Center in Texas, start reading Black Box Voting by Bev Harris. That'll get you get started. There's a thing called the Australian Electoral Commission. And I've talked to several Australians, and they have very strong faith in that commission and what they're doing. And somehow it's nonpartisan. It's not bipartisan, it's nonpartisan. And somehow they have a culture in Australia in that commission that seems to be working. And I haven't had time to start digging in and finding out what they're doing, but they're doing something right. And I think that's something that got added to my to-do list after watching all the recounts stonewalled in November. And it was the officials doing it. And I said, we have a machine problem, we have a process problem, and we have a people problem. And we need to start addressing that. And I hope somebody can start digging around and figuring out what Australia or maybe some other countries are doing right so that we can try to change the culture. If you're asking where in the United States is there a problem with the culture, I would think the shorter answer would be where in the United States is there not a problem?
Agreed. And by the way, Jim is probably one of the best people in California, and top of the legislators, working very hard in California. Jim, I didn't know you were here. Hi. Good hearing from you.
Hi. Good hearing you. We're fighting an email voting bill.
Yes.
And that's taking up a lot of time right now.
I know it is.
Ugly.
I've been watching.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely want to, dovetail together and support everyone in going into the right direction and trying to change the culture. We do have language that things like, we think really that hand counting, as a redundancy as much as is doable with, yes, the proper protocol and training can kind of help create this culture. As well as the election duty, like jury duty, some of those things that we do have in the language we're writing. And the holiday, the national holiday for these elections, and also information that will be sent out to you, a sample ballot, and where your poll is at. Various things like that that are incorporated into what we're doing to try to help shift the culture to some degree. We might think of other things to add or elaborate on what we have, but is there anyone else who would like to say something quickly? Because I know our meeting is like over 2 hours now, and since we do have people still interested with questions, I don't mind, but if anyone else has a comment or a question. Well, I think we might now be done. And I want to thank everyone who attended, and Ray and John, and indirectly Mitch Trachtenberg and other people who I think they're trying in their way with, you know, the different processes and machines that we would like to see, since machines seem to be at least a part of the picture, but the redundancies. So everyone please share about what we're trying to do. So the more brains we have on the picture and everything, the better document we can write. So thanks so much, and spread the word. And we look forward to working together, but we're going to try to get this done pretty quickly because we do all feel some urgency. So thanks for being here, and thank you, John.
Thank you.
With us.
We don't have to fix it all immediately. We want, there's an urgency to getting some of it done, but as you and I talked the other day, Monta, we need to have a system that reviews the state of our democracy on a regular basis going forward.
Sure. And on top of that, when what we do fix starts to take effect, we'll have better people in office, and they'll be fixing it, you know, too. It's not like we'll just sit back and, you know, not stay engaged going forward, even with people we trust, because I think that's part of why we can trust anyone, is that we continue to stay engaged with them. But, you know, at some point we won't have to be going this route to do it. You know, we can have a lot easier time, like Jim, you know, with the legislature, because there'll be people that'll be listening to us instead of how they are now. So those kinds of things will sort of have an automatic, you know, improvement in lots of areas as we go forward. So thanks very much.
Thank you again. And remember what Margaret Mead said: a few committed citizens can change the world. It's the only thing it ever has. Don't anybody take that away from you. One person can make a difference. We all should try. AFK.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you. Good words to end on, John. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Well, there's an after party at my house. Anybody wants to come over?
Well, I'll be in New York, and I'm planning to go to DC around July 4th or June 4th or 5th.
Well, give me
I got
a
a good
call.
friend at DC. He's a big-time lawyer, election. In fact, he's the guy who did the hand count for in Minnesota, where they spent like $15 million. And I'm hoping he's going to draft in this thing.
Well, if you have room at the table for a beer, let me know.
I will.
Yeah.
Thank you. Get in touch. Keep in touch. I'm on Facebook, and also you got my email. This report, email me. I'll keep it confidential. And it's quite a report. Thanks again, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Good
everyone.
night.
Pleased to have everyone. Long meeting, but a good meeting.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of them this time.
It's just, there's so much to it that just, yeah, it's been a lot, and trying to fix a lot of it, you know, do the best job we can to pretty much fix all of it, knowing that you can't fix all of it, but knowing that what you're putting in place is going to continue the work, you know. And I think change the culture, kind of redirect us a little bit. Oh, I don't know, you know, I figured out how to do that screen sharing, and then it was like every time I tried to screen share, I don't know what the heck it would do.
Yeah,
I have to have my co-pilot. I can't do it.
there was something weird about this meeting, like with the link or something, because it wasn't in my list of meetings, but it still was available to join and host. I don't know. It was something weird with Zoom. I'm gonna, because it's a recurring meeting, you know, I'm gonna just
right.
just do a different one every week.
Maybe so, yeah. Just so we won't have any. Well, I just didn't know what was going on when I know we did it before, but I couldn't quite remember why it didn't. I just thought we fixed whatever it was, and I wasn't expecting that to come up again while we were in the middle of the meeting. I just was like, oh my gosh, you know. And then it did it both times.
You're good though. You're good.
Yeah, I wish we could maybe edit it, but I don't want to go to that trouble because we have a lot of work to do. So,
Yeah, it
and,
sounds.
and besides that, we do kind of need to get that thing to John Brakey that we promised. Not that we need more work, but we kind of have it mostly done in a way. So sometime we might do that. But I really, right now, I need to get all those materials for everyone to
Right.
download. I should have said something about that.
I wanted to ask you about that. Like, where you wanted me to put? You're talking about that sign up list that you guys sent me in an email.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the sign up list we want. I haven't looked at all the columns and categories. And so if you have put, I don't know what you've done with what got sent to you, if there's any revisions to it. I haven't really seen what Joanne and then Bruce revised Joanne's, and I guess maybe both, or the revision or something got sent to us, which I just forwarded to you since you kind of raised your hand on the one thing. And I figured, you know, you might just say, here's what it looks like. What do you think? I figured you'd look it over because you've got a really good brain that helps us organize, you know, with the kinds of roles / categories that we need to cover. And so in a sign-up sheet, what do we want to ask them? You know, most of these sheets obviously are going to be local, but we ourselves also have to, anyway, Colleen, you're on with us?
Yeah, I think her microphone isn't working or something like that.
Oh, your mic isn't working. Well, Colleen, we're so glad that you've joined in and came on, and you know, even with your family still there. So your granddaughter, or maybe it's your 5-year-old. Okay, I have my rambunctious 5-year-old. So I don't. At any rate, thanks for being on, and maybe maybe what we're trying to do is send people out in the things over the weekend, even if they have their granddaughters in tow, they can carry a clipboard, and maybe a granddaughter can, you know, we might need kid t-shirts that say take back elections. We were talking about that before, looking at iron-on decals to get us started with, you know, t-shirts and buttons and stuff, so that we could just have a small little handout and a sign-up sheet to start building, you know, support for, you know, what we're doing, because we need to get started now. There's 3 big things over the weekend. They have the Science March, that's a national thing. Then Earth Day is going on, kind of part of the Science March, sort of, I might think would kick off Earth Day. Maybe it's even on Earth Day, the 22nd is when it is. And then Earth Day here in my community is on Sunday, I think the 25th. And then on the 29th in DC is the Climate March, but there are sister events to all these things all over everywhere. And so we could get out. I'm planning to have a table for people's visioning, which Take Back Elections is part of. And so we're going to have a table at Earth Day and have a little bit about Take Back Elections along with our other stuff. But people can just go and take their clipboard and some of the handouts and wear their buttons and no handouts and just say, here's who we are, sign up, go check out our website and our Facebook group. You don't even have to print out handouts. Just take the sign-up sheet, though. That's a good idea. And, you know, just use your mouth in the sign-up sheet. Send them to our work. But, yeah, I forgot to mention that, dadgummit. We were just going so long, and I thought, oh, my gosh, everyone's this is a very long meeting. So I wish I had thought about that.
Well,
Yes, we have things, Colleen, we're going to be posting on the website that you can download. One is the sign-up sheet. We will have a quarter-page handout if you want to use them, but it's not necessary. We have things that people can use to cut out little parts that you can make with, if you know someone with a button maker, to make a button. And we're looking at trying to make t-shirts with decals or something, but we're looking at some of these things being like a gift with donation, because that's the next thing we have to do too, is start working on money donations to support this. You know, some of us have just, you know, none of us have gotten a penny, and it's not like we are particularly all about that, but yes, it's really hard for people to give so much of their time that they might otherwise be able to help themselves better with. So it is a sacrifice, and, you know, none of those people are asking for big dollars or anything, but something really is appropriate and would be very helpful.
We do have the sign-up sheet on the website already, though.
You have the science date?
Sign-up sheets.
Oh, the sign-up sheets are already on there. Okay.
PDF ones, but just like.
Perfect. That's good. I'm sure it's good enough. I'll go take a quick look at it because I haven't even looked at it. And I wish I had thought to say that. I was just really focused on the issue here tonight. Not so much, you know, rallying people out into the streets over this next several days.
Yeah,
10
we're
days.
our voice too, calling, right, Anta?
What was that?
Sam Ronan, I thought was going to be on the call tonight, but I guess.
I have no idea. I don't know if he's on the call. I know he knew about it, but I don't know if he came on or not.
I think he made it.
So I would have thought he might have spoken up had he, and certainly we would have been happy to let him say about his organization. Yeah, Colleen, I thought that might have been you because Adria and I were in a kind of a meeting with our voice people at one point, and they were saying, oh, we just got this list of all the media people from this really nice woman named Colleen. And I thought to myself, I know who that is. And I'll bet that was you. I'm not sure. But it might have been you. And I thought all the Bernie media work that we did, we gathered up all that stuff, you know. So it's all helping us in all kinds of ways. And it keeps on giving. The work that everyone has put together and searched and researched and shared and whatever. Did Kate come on? Yeah, she was on for a while. She's not still on though. Or is she still on?
No.
Okay. Okay, well.
I think did Carol have something that she wanted to say?
Carol Kronberg, I don't know Carol, but thank you, Carol, for coming to our call. Where are you from, Carol? She doesn't seem to show us a mic or anything, so maybe she's not there, but her name's there.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you know where she's from, did she say?
I don't know.
Sometimes throughout, just post in the chat, you know. And I forgot to say that on the phone calls again. You're going to have to remind me or just pipe up in the questions section. Everyone who's on, please at least let us know or just call me to do it, you know, because the problem is they can't type in the chat. They just have to shout out their name, or we'd have to take a little moment to do that, you know, but I need to do that.
They can't see the chat either, so.
Right, they can't see it or type into it. And so what I need to do, maybe Adria, you could just sort of be my little cheerleader that reminds me to ask about the callers from where they are when I start to open up for maybe even the first questions, because it would be nice to take a pause and at least just sort of acknowledge all the places people are calling in from and our callers, since they can't be as involved. Mm-hmm. So I've got to remember to do that, but I get really involved in our thing, you know, trying to stay focused on this to do a good job.
There weren't too many call-in people tonight, so, you know, it wasn't.
Most of them came online.
Yeah.
Then, yeah. Well, we did have, what, like 21 or 2 people or something like that?
Yeah, I think it was about, for most of the meeting, about 17 or 18, I think.
Oh, okay. I saw at one point there was 21 people, but it was just at one point. But I didn't hardly check very much. I'm mostly just paying attention to the meeting. But I did see, at least at one point, I did see the 17 and the 18, but I also saw one time it was 21. I don't know how long people stayed on or why they come for just a short while, but it's okay. Whatever it is, it's better than nothing. So anyway.
All right.
Well, did you get your taxes in?
Yeah.
Good job. So we'll talk.
Take the money out before somebody else gets to it.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Make sure to get your thing filed. Oh, I'm so tired. Oh. So we will get back in touch. I'll probably be working with you offline too. I'll go on there and look at that sign-up sheet and take a look at that and go from there.
Cool.
Okay, sweetie, thank you so much. And yes, I need you. I need you to help me run these meetings. It's just too much. I can't handle it all. Plus, I'm just not a tech person, really. Not that good. You're really good at just dealing with it.
All right. But yeah, it was fine though. I think you did a good job.
It worked out ultimately. I managed, but I feel really clumsy, and it just kind of was like, I don't think it makes the meeting very good. But oh well. We're just who we are. We're not like some sort of 40-hour-a-week paid person to put off a professional whatever. So that's okay. I'll talk to you later, sweetie.
All right.
I just paused the recording. That's what I did. So can you take it over to do what?
Stop the recording, and then it should start to convert. And then when I end the meeting, actually no, when I end the meeting, then it will start to convert.
What do I need to do? You're the host now, right?
Yeah, but I don't have the recording
Button.
for recording it. But wait, let me see. Hold on.
It says that the recording is paused, and then there's a little black box that might just stop it, but I don't want to press something.
Yeah, the one with like the square.
Yeah, is that what I pressed to stop it? Yeah. All right. It wasn't recording all this stuff. It was paused, so we don't have to worry about that.
Oh, okay. Oh, is that what it means when it's blinking? That must, I guess.
Huh. There's the recording button there. Do you see it now? It's all red, like we're recording.
I don't see it. Well, that was doing that the whole, it's blinking now though. Before it wasn't blinking.
Oh, I swear to God, I hope we recorded this meeting.
It said recording. I don't
That's
know.
what I thought too. I thought it was recording.
We won't find out till the meeting ends because it never.
I hate this. I don't like it. I'm very nervous now. I'm going to hang up. You tell me if we're okay. I'm going to just hit the red button up at the top and goodbye.